please give a lot of love and support to Jordy Bird.
So I met this guy named Johnny, and the first thing he said to me when he came up at the bar was, "Do you have a gun in your hair?" And as ridiculous as it sounds, it actually made perfect sense because it was like he was the only other person in this swanky downtown bar that knew that I didn't belong there. He knew instantly that I was like trailer trash from the woods, and so I knew instantly that I liked him. I mean, he was the type of guy that just picked on me the rest of the night, and he reminded me so much of my father, who has told me, as long as I can remember, that I am too fat and too mean to get a man, so I better learn how to cook. And Johnny didn't care that I didn't know how to cook, but he cared deeply about getting under my skin. So the first night I went to his apartment, I was so fucking nervous anyway, because I show up and he lives in this beautiful building from the 1920s, and there's these gorgeous hardwood floors, and everything smelled like peppermint Dr. Bronner's. And I was living in a studio behind a grocery store, routinely taking their food from the dumpsters. So my only saving grace is that he also lived next to a psych ward. So there was this like constant kaleidoscope of lights and alarms, and I thought that I could fit into that chaos. So in his bedroom, though, he had these 2 sliding glass mirrored doors. And when we started having sex, I was terrified at him seeing me reflected in the doors, because I thought if he saw me, he would see me as I saw myself, fat and ugly, and then he wouldn't want to fuck me anymore. So I just kind of like closed my eyes when he asked me to get on top. But because I closed my eyes, I didn't know that I had gotten a raging bloody nose. I mean, like, all over my chest and his. It was so bad, it had like woven deep into his chest hair, and it covered this tattoo of a black cat he had across his heart. Underneath the tattoo of the black cat was a tattoo of his ex-wife's name, Lori. By the time I opened my eyes and could like see what I had done, I was terrified. So I tried to get off his dick as fast as possible, like holding my face with one hand and my bloody boobs with another, but all the while avoiding those mirrors because I knew I looked like Carrie covered in pig's blood. But for a girl that grew up on a pig farm in the middle of fucking nowhere, the last thing you want to look like is Carrie covered in pig's blood. So when I got off of him, I sat on the floor and I was like rocking and trying to get it to stop bleeding. And he calmed me down by saying that the blood felt warm on his skin. He said he always wanted his ex-wife to pee on him, but she never would. And I thought he shared it in passing. I really thought that it was something he said to just make me feel better because of the mess. But it came up again and again and again. I mean, we would go out to a punk show and we'd come home shitty drunk, and I would lay on my back on the mattress and I would dangle my legs off the edge of the bed and just like wait for him to rip off my sweat-stained tights. But before he could free my legs, he would say, "Do you want to pee on me?" And it was so hard to take him seriously because he was this like larger than life person. He epitomized the bear concept because he was big and furry yet very flamboyant. And whenever we were poor, which was all the time, we would brainstorm ways to sell his dirty underwear to men online. Or, we'd get drunk and I'd get him naked and he'd hold a pumpkin and we'd take pictures and think of ways we could sell it. Yeah. He loved it. All I remember is with like Evan Williams and hand-rolled cigarettes thick on his lips, he would describe his philosophy on sexuality to anyone that would listen. He would say, "A hungry bear in the woods doesn't discriminate. A hungry bear would eat berries or a picnic basket if he could, which meant it didn't matter the sex or gender of his desire when he was hungry. He was just hungry. And he was fucking ravishing. I mean, our sex was so wet and raging. I would lick like the sweat from his brow, and he would just mop up the mess between my legs with his mustache. But more than the acts of sex, his favorite thing to do was talk about sex, which meant he just talked about me. I mean, we would be at a bar, and I could overhear him describing the shape of my asshole to a stranger. Or even, in a crowded room, I could hear him mimicking the sounds that I made in bed. And I hated it. It made me feel less than human. It made me feel like I was something he fucked and talked about and not a participant in the act. And it had gotten so bad that our friends and I came up with a signal. So whenever Johnny talked about me inappropriately in public, we would say yellow triangle, and we'd hold our hands above our head like a fucking Teletubby. But that signal meant, like, if he was next to you at the bar or if he could see it from across the room, he knew he had taken things too far. And so I knew that we had somehow roped our friends into this very public display of a sub-dom relationship that we flirted with. Because Johnny got off by pushing my boundaries. He liked to flirt with how much shame I could take in public, which is why I didn't really understand what he was asking when he kept asking me to pee on him. I used to think he wanted me to turn him into a human toilet. But the longer I stayed with him and the more I let him humiliate me, the more I realized that Johnny wasn't into that, but I was. I was the type of girl that only knew affection through degradation. And so Johnny filled me with cum, and he fed into my self-loathing. Because he did know just when to say that I was too fat, and I was too country, and I was dumb. But it is okay, because he loved me anyway. But over the years, he created so much emptiness around me and inside me. He let me know time and again that my sexuality was not my own, because it was his. And on the day I finally caved, I could sense him leaving. He had stopped asking me to pee on him. He had stopped kissing me on the mouth. And it was then that I knew how much I'd wanted him to be in control. And I know it doesn't make sense, because I hated the humiliation. But I needed someone so desperately to claim me. I needed someone to want me, and I needed someone to fuck me. And so I let him dominate me so subtly, but in plain sight. And he cut at me deeper than the zip ties he used to bound my wrists, and he hit at me harder than any paddle that I have ever received. And this wasn't a traditional sub-dom relationship, at least not in the safe sense, because he never asked for my consent. He didn't ask for my safe word because he didn't care about my pain or my pleasure. Our relationship was this constant power struggle, and one that I couldn't keep up with because I couldn't satiate him. And the night I peed on him, I just wanted him to know that I was worthy of that control. And I don't know what we did that day or night, because it all felt very mundane. The only thing I know was exactly what I had eaten, because I had this buildup in my head that if I ever peed on him, I would only eat cherries and green tea, because those are things I read make your cunt taste sweet. So it'd make my pee smell good. But I know all I really had that day were grilled cheese sandwiches made by a vegan with a nose ring and 5 beers. So my pee smelled exactly like the floor of a bar, but Johnny didn't care. A hungry bear in the woods would get his. So we got home that night, and he half-heartedly kissed me, which was promising, and we got naked in the shower. And I tried to masturbate to just calm myself down and try to get aroused, but he didn't care if I came. So he turned on the shower, and he told me to stand with my hands flat against the murky pink tile and spread my legs. And so for a while, I just stared at our shower curtain, which was this map of the world. And then for a while, I watched him. And he sat at the back of the tub with his legs straight and his dick instantly hard. And I watched as like this beads of water had formed in his beard, and they started to roll down his belly and onto this tattoo he had of a famous drawing called All Is Vanity. And the drawing depicts a woman sitting admiring her reflection in the mirror. But it's also a double image, because if you view it from a different angle or from afar, it's actually a human skull. And I told myself to piss on that smug fucking girl's face. I told myself that she was the human toilet and not me. But of course, my bladder mocked me. I was 22, and I knew nothing of submission and dominance. But Johnny sat there, so silently awaiting my pee. He gave me space so vast and agonizing to submit. And so when the water turned cold, like a shock, I just gave in. I peed with my eyes cast forward and my hands still flat on that murky pink tile. And I peed and I could hear the sound of like cupping water. It's like the sound that water makes when you pull it from a faucet in your hands. And so I was peeing in his mouth, but I didn't want to be. So I didn't turn around. I couldn't see what I had done until I was finished. So I don't know if he swallowed it or if it finally formed little tributaries in his beard and rolled down his belly and hit that smug fucking girl's face. And I don't know why we didn't talk about it. I don't know why. He didn't even fuck me for like a job well done that night. And it didn't curb his desire to humiliate me in public. What I do know is that when he left me about 4 years later, he told me that the only type of person that would fuck me would hate me. He said that they would have to because I have such a sad face. And it's true. I am sad. No, I'm sad most of the time. But I'm fine with it, and I'm fucking working on it. I know that I am drawn to people that treat me like shit so I can continue to feel like shit, but I don't want it anymore. Because what Johnny never understood was that he needed me to submit more than I needed him to dominate. And I just needed someone I hated more than myself.